Les Trois Musketeers was published in 1844 and written by French author Alexandre Dumas. This historical swashbuckling adventure story was such a hit that it was translated into English just 2 years later. It has remained popular ever since, with numerous films based on the books and cartoon adaptations from Barbie to Disney, not to mention the 1980s cartoon D'Artagnan and the Three Muskehounds. But how much of Dumas's inspiration came from historical figures? Keep watching to discover the real identities of the Three Musketeers. First, let's address the title itself and ask, what is a musketeer? Well, the clue is in the name. They were soldiers armed with muskets and were traditionally members of household troops of the French king during the 17th and 18th centuries. So you may be asking yourself, if they had guns, how come the Three Musketeers always fought with swords? Well, during the 16th century, muskets were unlike the firearms we have today. Although they were technically handheld, they were very cumbersome, required around 30 seconds to load, and were usually used with a forked rest to help with accuracy. Given the setup time and the fact that they were ineffective in close combat, musketeers were also issued cavalry swords for hand-to-hand combat. These were much easier to wield when it came to a spontaneous fight, which is why they were favored by the musketeers in the novel. During peacetime, the musketeers were mainly used for the king's protection and entertainment, escorting him and staging mock battles. King Louis XIV was particularly fond of showing off their prowess at military reviews. The Three Musketeers was set during the reigns of King Louis XIII and Louis XIV. During the 1620s, the French nobles were stirring to revolt, and the king's principal minister, Cardinal Richelieu, was intent on taking power from the nobles to ensure absolute obedience to the king. Cardinal Richelieu makes it into the novel as the main antagonist. He plots against the queen and sends his spies to keep tabs on the musketeers. In reality, Armand-Jean du Plessis, Cardinal Edu de Richelieu, was a pale and sickly child who rose through the religious ranks thanks to his charm. In 1616, he was appointed as chaplain to the new Queen of France, Anna of Austria, which paved his route to the royal council. By 1616, he had negotiated himself into the position of Secretary of State. In 1617, he was banished when a palace revolution overthrew Marie de Medici, who was acting as regent for the young Louis XIII. Eventually, Richelieu was reinstated, and after the revolt of the Huguenots, Richelieu was once again promoted. Richelieu clashed with Queen Anna, whose brother was King Philip IV of Spain. As France and Spain were at war, Richelieu kept her under surveillance, revealing she had been conducting treasonable correspondence with her brother. Luckily, Anna bore Louis 2 sons, securing her position. Scholars generally agree that Richelieu was a great man who brought France back from the brink of collapse after decades of religious and civil war. With his help, France became unified and went on to be a leading European power. Another villain from the novels is Milady de Winter, who many believe to be based on Lucy Hay, Countess of Carlisle. Lucy's father had been suspected in the English gunpowder plot of 1605, and at 18 she married James Hay, who would soon become the Earl of Carlisle. Lucy was a hit in court due to her wit, intelligence, and beauty. Lucy later became the mistress of George Villiers, who was King Charles I's closest friend. Through this relationship, Lucy rose to the position of Lady of the Bedchamber for Queen Henrietta Maria. However, many believe that George had installed her in that position as a spy. She also clashed with the Queen of France, Anna of Austria, whom she felt was supplanting her in George's affections. So much for the antagonists of the story. What about the heroes? Historically, the Three Musketeers were more than good friends. They were related. In the novel, the Musketeers serve under Monsieur de Treville, whose historical counterpart is Jean-Armand de Perret, Count of Troisvillers. Troisvillers had joined the Musketeers in 1625, but he was also a prominent figure in court. He disapproved of Richelieu's policies and plotted against him, which briefly got him exiled from court. Probably wanting to keep royalty in the ranks, he enlisted 3 younger relatives into the Musketeers, 1 first cousin and 2 distant cousins. These 3 young men were renowned for their swordsmanship and would provide the inspiration behind the famous Musketeers. Number 1. Porthos. Porthos is traditionally the largest in the group and the one who is often played as the comic relief. An extrovert who loves wine, women, and song, He has been played by the likes of Gerard Depardieu and John Rhys Davies. The character of Porthos was based on Isaac de Porto, who was born in 1617 in Béarn. Although details about his life are scarce, we know he joined the Musketeers of the Guard in 1642 and was a Gascon Black Musketeer, so called because of the black horses they rode. After his father died in 1654, he resigned from the Guard and became the Secretary of the Parliament of Béarn. He died in 1712, aged 95. Number 2. Aramis. In the novels, Aramis is the medic of the group who studied for the priesthood before becoming a musketeer. He is also portrayed as a bit of a ladies' man, with his lovers including Queen Anna. In Dumas's books, Aramis is revealed as the father of King Louis XIV, although historically there is nothing to prove that Louis XIV was illegitimate. Dumas may have added this detail due to the mental instability and supposed homosexuality of Louis XIII. The inspiration for Aramis was Henri d'Aramis, who also came from Béarn and was a Black Musketeer. Born in 1620, Aramis was from an old aristocratic family and was a lay abbot of an abbey, although, amazingly, this fact was unknown to Dumas. Aramis joined the Musketeers in 1640, but had returned to Béarn by early 1650. There, he married Jeanne de Béarn-Bonnesse and had 2 sons and 2 daughters. Although the exact circumstances around his death aren't documented, it is known that he died in his late 50s or early 60s, as his second son inherited the family property in 1681. Number 3. Athos. Athos is the oldest of the group and the wisest. He is described as thoughtful, mysterious, and melancholy. Like the other Musketeers, he is a lovable but flawed character. He gambles and drinks, but his strength of character makes him somewhat of a role model to the others, and he is often regarded as the leader. The real Athos was Armand de Sileg d'Athos d'Hauteville. He was born in 1615 and, like his cousins, was a member of the Black Musketeers. Not much is known about Athos, other than he died in Paris on December 21, 1643, at age 28. The record of his death states that he was taken close to the market at Pré-aux-Clercs. The use of the word taken and the location, a popular spot for dueling, leads historians to believe that he died in a duel. Number 4. D'Artagnan. I know we said 3, but how could we leave out the novel's main protagonist and probably the most famous musketeer of all? In the novel, D'Artagnan is a romantic hero driven by chivalry and love. He is an idealistic but impoverished young nobleman who has come to Paris to join the Guard and make his fortune. He displays all the traits we expect in a young hero: bravery, nobility, and ambition. The real D'Artagnan was Charles de Batz de Castelmore, who, unlike the other musketeers, hailed from Lupiac in Gascony. De Castelmore was born sometime between 1613 and 1615 in the Chateau of Castelmore. His grandfather was the feudal lord of D'Artagnan, which was where the famous name came from. De Castelmore had 3 brothers. His 2 older brothers were captains of the Guard, and his younger brother became an abbot. A recruit usually had to prove themselves in a regular regiment before they could join the Musketeers. De Castelmore joined the Guards around 1635, serving under Captain des Essarts, and his company took part in numerous successful sieges. During his service, de Castelmore managed to secure a patron called Cardinal Mazarin, who was the protégé of Richelieu. He eventually joined the Musketeers at the age of 30 in 1644. After the regiment disbanded, de Castelmore continued to serve under Mazarin during the French Civil Wars. Mazarin took over from Richelieu upon his death in 1642. However, Mazarin was not popular in the court, mainly because he wasn't French. Mazarin was exiled in 1651, and de Castelmore acted as a go-between for Mazarin and his allies. De Castelmore fought in many battles and was usually at the center of the fray. He was nearly killed in combat in 1645 at Stenay, but at age 40 he earned himself a promotion and became captain of the Guards. De Castelmore rejoined the Musketeers when they were reinstated in 1657. In 1659, de Castelmore married Charlotte Anne de Chanlacy, who was the Baroness of Sainte-Croix. They had 2 sons born a year apart and named both Louis, after Louis XIV and Louis the Dauphin. However, the marriage only lasted 6 years, possibly due to de Castelmore's stints away from home on duty. During the early 1660s, de Castelmore acted as a jailer to a high-profile political prisoner. Nicolas Fouquet was the former superintendent of finances. He had been arrested on charges of embezzlement, although it is generally accepted that he was the fall guy for governmental corruption and financial mismanagement. Fouquet was initially banished, but King Louis felt that this was too lenient a punishment and sentenced Fouquet to lifelong imprisonment in solitary confinement. Fouquet's only allowance was a valet who served him during his time in jail. After his marriage failed, de Castelmore threw himself into his military career. In 1671, he was involved in another high-profile arrest of the Duc de Lauzun, and in 1672, he was appointed the governor of Lille. But by 1673, de Castelmore was back leading his regiment of Musketeers. In May, his division was involved in the siege of Maastricht, and his company was instrumental in taking a demi-lune fortification. From there, the Duke of Monmouth instructed the men to cross the open ground that led to the Tongres Gate. Probably against his better judgment, de Castelmore led his musketeers into the fray. He made it to the ramparts of Maastricht before he was fatally wounded by musket fire. He died on June 25, 1673, at the age of 60. A description of his death reads, "It was on this occasion that Monsieur d'Artagnan was killed. The intensity of musket fire was such that even hail could not fall more abundantly. 2 musketeers trying to pick up Monsieur d'Artagnan were killed at his side, and 2 others who had taken their place and given themselves the same duty were killed in the same way next to their captain." Even Louis XIV grieved his death, writing, "I have lost D'Artagnan, in whom I had the utmost confidence and who merited it on all occasions." The reason we know more about de Castelmore than any of the other musketeers is that Dumas based his work on a 17th-century book by French novelist Gatien de Courtilles de Sandras called Memoirs of Monsieur d'Artagnan. Sandras served as a musketeer for 15 years during the same period that de Castelmore served. When he first released the memoirs, he was forced to publish them in Holland rather than France, as the book contained what may have been considered to reveal state secrets. While Sandras faithfully recorded most of the significant events of de Castelmore's life, historians agree that he took some liberties when describing his personal life. Many believe that Dumas had thought the memoirs was a work of fiction when he first used them as a starting point for his novel, and had claimed that his book was based on historical events to avoid being accused of plagiarism of Sandras's work. Ironically, the work from which he copied was, in fact, historical. So now you know the history behind the 3 Musketeers. Do you think they were worthy of all the movies made about them? Let us know in the comments below. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about French history, check out our book, History of France, A Captivating Guide to French History. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.